My name is Ian Khan, and I welcome you to the forum today. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Alvi. Thank you, everybody. I know we all have got together from around the world and to answer some major questions around the global situation of COVID-19. Thank you to the government of Azerbaijan and ASAN and the leadership of the country to bring this forum together so that in order to find out the solutions for tomorrow, we're all together trying to understand what the problem is, first of all, and number two, progress together, collaborate together, and find a common way, because in so many ways, and we've just realized it, that we're all connected and interdependent on each other. So thank you so much for this forum, this opportunity, and to come together. So the program for the next 2 days, today and tomorrow, is amazing. There's many great speakers, governments that are part of the conversation, and all of you are deeply appreciated for putting your time, effort, and energy into this forum. So thank you very much for being part of this. I will be moderating session number 1, which is happening right now for about the next 1 hour. And we have 6 speakers in this first session. We'll open up with Mr. Alvi from the Republic of Azerbaijan. We have Dr. Salim M. Al-Malik, Director General of Cisco, Mr. Akam Steiner, Undp Administrator, Mr. Borjbrin, President of the World Economic Forum, Mr. Ali Khan Beminov, Chairman of the Steering Committee of Astana Civil Service Hub, and Mr. Jean-Pierre Ilong Mabasi, Secretary General of UCLG Africa. Without any further ado, I will bring Mr. Alvi Mehdiyev, who is the chairman of the State Agency for Public Service and Social Innovations under the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan. Mr. Mehdiyev obtained his bachelor's and master's degrees in law from Baku State University. After being commissioned from the military service in the National Army of the Republic of Azerbaijan, he worked as an advisor and a leading advisor of the General Department of Legislation in the Ministry of Justice of Azerbaijan in 2006-2009. Between 2009 and 2012, Mr. Mehdiyev continued his career as the advisor of the Department on Work with Law Enforcement Bodies in the administration of the President of Azerbaijan. In 2012, he was promoted to the position of Deputy Director of the department, where he worked until 2014. According to the order of the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan, he was appointed as the chairman of the State Agency for Public Service and Social Innovations under the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan on 27 April 2018. And without any further ado, I'll ask Mr. Alvi Mehdiyev to open up the conference. And any of you who's not speaking, please put your microphones on mute so that we avoid any noises coming in. So thank you so much. Mr. Mehdiyev, please go ahead.
Thank you. Distinguished dignitaries, dear Mr. Khan, dear participants of the forum. I am privileged to be part of the opening of the ASAN-initiated first Global Web Forum titled Government's Agile Response to COVID-19. We are very honored to initiate this web forum at this very juncture, given the complicated situation that we are all living under. The topic of this forum is of special significance to all of our nations, and it is a useful platform for decision makers coming from different parts of the world to share their experiences, challenges, and best practices. In this context, I would like to use this opportunity to bring up to date our own experience gained over the last couple of years. Under the leadership of the President of Azerbaijan, the government has taken a series of measures to address the consequences of the critical situation caused by COVID-19. The aim has been to reduce negative effects with a view of mitigating the impact on citizens and businesses. In the medical field, necessary medical equipment and means were urgently imported, while in parallel, the shortage of medical resources was solved by accelerating local production. Testing was carried out within the framework of close cooperation with the World Health Organization. Azerbaijan got one of the highest ranking per capita in the number of tests carried out. Disinfection was implemented across the country, and 10 modular hospitals were built. One of them has already been integrated. In the socio-economic field, a support package worth more than $2 billion has been allocated in order to assist social groups in Azerbaijan during the pandemic. Financial support has been provided to enterprises and companies affected by COVID-19. The government immediately identified a list of socially vulnerable groups and provided financial support within 2 months. All these measures have ensured the agility of management. As a result, Azerbaijan has been one of the countries least affected by the pandemic. Agile management, adaptive decision-making, and efficient implementation thereof have laid the foundation for Azerbaijan to be among the countries with the lowest losses suffered during the pandemic. During the pandemic, we have all witnessed the necessity of sound public administration, especially transparent, accessible, and responsible public service delivery. Those in emergency cases, such as the fight against COVID-19, provision of unhindered and unimpeded access to public services becomes exceptionally vital. Access to public services in Azerbaijan has been ensured through the ASAN service centers. Moreover, during the fight against COVID-19, followed by several safety restrictions, access to public services was further strengthened through the introduction of technical means and innovations. ASAN service centers were capable to demonstrate adaptive work style and to render all the services with due respect to the safety distance and sanitary hygienic standards as implied by the emergency constraints. Dear participants, ASAN service was established upon the initiative of the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan back in 2012 as an integral part of the reforms in the sphere of public administration. It is the Azerbaijani model for rendering public and private services from one single space. Over 320 services are offered in ASAN service centers. Up until today, services have been provided to citizens based on more than 37 million applications. The satisfaction rate of citizens is more than 99%. Today, ASAN service is popular throughout the region and beyond as the first place winner of the UN Public Service Award in the category of improving the delivery of public services. ASAN service has also been successful in the field of digitalization and electronic services. Thus, due to the advancement in the area of e-services and digitalization, ASAN service received the UN Award for developing public services through digital governance. ASAN has been in the forefront of the fight against COVID-19 with its smart solutions and innovations. It has introduced special electronic permission systems both for individual citizens and organizations. It has received positive feedback from the public in Azerbaijan and has attracted the interest of our partners abroad. ASAN has shared its successful experience on various international platforms. At the same time, according to the information provided, the electronic permit system has been approved and researched by a number of countries. Now, Azerbaijan is more than ready to share its experience in this field. Meantime, the advanced concept of ASAN service is being applied in 7 countries and within the membership of 2 international organizations, Cisco and USAG Africa. Dear friends, we are all facing the same challenges. We, the peoples of the world, so finding ourselves in different regions, can overcome and mitigate these challenges as well as eliminate its negative consequences. To that end, we need to unite our efforts to synchronize our thinking and benefit from common synergies for effective cooperation among ourselves. I am confident that this cooperation might be stronger through the involvement of public and private organizations, as well as through civil society and academicians coming up with the innovations and smart solutions proceeding from the best interests of our citizens and peoples. I am optimistic the forum is going to be very workable and a practical platform for innovative gathering and mainstreaming of our joint thoughts and actions worldwide. It will enable us to address the main issues in the context of the fight against COVID-19, as well as within the framework of other topics today and in the future. Taking the opportunity, I would like to thank Mr. Al-Malik, Director General of Cisco, Mr. Achim Steiner, Undp Administrator, Mr. Brian, President of the World Economic Forum, and Mr. Lou Devine, the Deputy Director of the European External Action Service, for joining the forum and honoring it with their bright ideas and thoughts. I equally extend my gratitude to Mr. Mumbasi, Secretary General of the USLG Africa, and Mr. Alekhan Baymano, Director of the Astana Civil Service Hub, for their valuable contribution to the work of the forum. I wish success to the work of the forum. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Chairman of the State Agency of Public Services and Social Innovations of the Republic of Azerbaijan, Mr. President of the World Economic Forum, Mr. Secretary General of UNCTAD, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the 54 member state of the Islamic World Education Scientific Culture Organization, Cisco, allow me to express my deep gratitude and sincere appreciation to President Ilham Aliyev of the Republic of Azerbaijan for organizing this timely global web forum on government agile response to COVID-19. The commendable and valuable contribution of Azerbaijan proactive and visionary leadership designed to assist decision makers to come together to learn from each other in facing pandemic, which has generated unprecedented health, social, and economic crisis. I am honored on participating in this forum, which encourage us to achieve our objectives. The forum offers a golden opportunity to discuss and evaluate government approach and mechanisms that can be implemented in countries facing challenges related to COVID-19. As a Director General of Cisco, I have requested all sectors to mobilize to mitigate the effect of the virus and minimize its educational, cultural, social, and economic impact, especially in countries with weak economy, fragile health, and education system. Knowing this pandemic might be more serious in magnitude, Cisco is working hard to ensure that our new normal can be made adaptable in all aspects of daily life. An effective government response to COVID-19 must take into consideration four essential factors. First, cutting-edge technologies, advanced communication, and cyber media should be the mainstay of government spirited interaction as social distancing may continue for a while. Government must establish strong collaboration utilizing technology as it opens opportunities to go beyond restriction in mobility and abate massive economic downturn and strain on personal and international relations. Second, it is important in this critical situation that government responses be all-inclusive, emphasizing equity and fairness, especially in health, financial, and education spectrum. The most vulnerable should be prioritized in its relevant policies as the crisis magnifies inequalities among regions between the rich and the poor. Among the marginal disabilities, women, children, older persons, migrants, and refugees. Third, government responses to this crisis should emphasize intergovernmental action, genuine dialogue, and multi-sectoral collaboration. Successful government responses should not be fragmented, unilateral, or individualistic. They should be an integral part of the whole. Joint effort, sharing best practices, and effective collaboration between international partners constitute to overcome the economic slowdown. Despite increased global tension, government should not lose confidence in international cooperation. Fourth, government response to the pandemic should not overlook the importance of culture and education. And their is to buy award for fighting against coronavirus, valued $200,000 to be rewarded to anyone who discover an efficient cure or vaccine against coronavirus. Second, we launched the comprehensive Humanitarian Coalition established to help poor and most affected countries during this pandemic and promote the power of innovation and scientific research. We also launched a Cisco Digital Home, which is a platform that provides technological, educational, and raising awareness for all groups. We helped in manufacturing sanitizer for some African countries. We provided smart equipment price for governance, good governance, capacity building, and a quality service in the management and governance of all sectors linked to education, science. We can all be agents of change. Collectively, we can solve challenges facing us now and in the future. Let us make every effort to create a resilient and flexible scheme that will overcome the challenges. I leave you with a quote said by J.F. Kennedy, the late President of the United States, where he said, "The Chinese use two brushstrokes to write the word crisis. One brushstroke stands for danger, the other for opportunity. In a crisis, be aware of the danger, but recognize the opportunity." Thank you very much for your attention. Stay safe and healthy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Salim. I really appreciate your words, and earlier as well, sorry, I was waiting a bit of a disconnection, and Mr. Alvi as well for the words that you have mentioned. I'd like to just add a quick comment on after Mr. Alvi spoke, that it's definitely, I think, best practices are the most important thing that are required right now to see what is working and to share them with the rest of the world. So thank you so much for sharing those insights and the success story that's coming out of Azerbaijan as well. Dr. Salim, I completely and wholeheartedly agree with you. I think our approach has to be cohesive. It has to happen in all directions, and no matter how much emphasis we put on the situation, I think it's less, because the one thing that we need to do is be proactive about our approach. So thank you for sharing your insights. I would also like to mention again that I did not mention the name of Mr. Luke Devine earlier. Apologies for my notes, they were mixed up. Okay. But Mr. Luke Devine will also be joining us. He's Deputy Managing Director, European External Action Services, EEAS. So apologies for any if I didn't mention you earlier. I'd like to invite Mr. Achim Steiner, who's the UNDP Administrator. Mr. Steiner became UNDP Administrator on 19 June 2017 and will serve for a term of 4 years. The United Nations General Assembly confirmed his nomination on 19 April 2017 following his nomination by Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Mr. Steiner is also the Vice Chair of the UN Development Group, which unites 32 UN funds, programs, specialized agencies, and other bodies that work to support sustainable development. Over nearly 3 decades, Mr. Steiner has been a global leader on sustainability development, climate resilience, and international cooperation. He's worked tirelessly to champion sustainability, economic growth, and equality for the vulnerable, and has been a vocal advocate for the sustainability development goals. Prior to joining UNDP, he was director of the Oxford Martin School and professorial fellow of Balliol College, University of Oxford. Mr. Steiner has served across the United Nations systems, looking at global challenges from both a humanitarian and a development perspective. He led the United Nations Environment Program 2006 to 2016, helping governments invest in things such as clean technologies and renewable energies. He was also the Director General of the United Nations Office at Nairobi. Mr. Steiner previously held other notable positions, including Director General of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature and Secretary General of the World Commission on Dams. Mr. Achim Steiner, the floor is yours.
Thank you for your kind and extensive introduction. To our host and Chairman Medvedev, also a big thank you for the invitation to my fellow panelists. Greetings here from the city of New York, where the sun is just rising over a city that is unrecognizable. And I begin with that because it is the home of the United Nations. It is also the headquarters of the United Nations Development Program. And as I think we watch the news every day across the world, we do realize, as my preceding speakers just mentioned, that we have entered into an era that none of us could have really imagined, although, you know, there were movies made about it, we had scenarios, we had role plays, we had crisis management teams that had practiced and prepared precisely for such a pandemic, and yet it is remarkable how unprepared, or perhaps how impossible it is to deal with such a pandemic when it comes in the way it has done. And I can tell you, I have now been in my house locked down trying to run UNDP with its 17,000 staff across the world for well over 2.5 months, and basically everything has changed and everything will keep on changing. So I welcome the opportunity to join you for this Global Web Forum, and also to put a spotlight on how Azerbaijan has been responding to this, because I think one of the things that we are learning very quickly right now is that the very different ways in which the virus is spreading, but also in which it is arriving, and in the way in which societies, whether as communities, governments, public infrastructure, the civil service, our health systems are able to respond, is in part a function of what happened before. And these are important lessons to learn as we look forward. But what is quite clear is that we are not only facing a pandemic as a health crisis, Borger just spoke to it as well, we are witnessing, in a sense, a concurrent, a simultaneous unfolding of crisis in a social, in an economic domain, and let's be frank, very soon also in the political arena. We're already beginning to see how communities, how nations, societies are beginning to polarize. We are seeing the emergence of hate speech, of blame being the currency of transaction. And we know how vulnerable our societies are, because if you look to the 2 or 3 years preceding this year, 2020, we already saw that in many countries, in many of our societies, there were the so-called underlying conditions, the tensions that were polarizing the political arena. How we manage the next few weeks and how we manage out of these next few weeks into the next few years will in many ways determine a very different set of futures. A pandemic is indeed a global phenomenon. There is no escape. And one of the first tests of our wisdom and our capacity to get through this will be whether we fall apart as an international community, or whether we are able, despite our differences, to come together and put primacy on the notion of cooperation. Nowhere in history, at least not in the 75 years of the United Nations history, has it ever been as clear that the imperative to act together is the foundation for actually escaping this pandemic. And yet, as we know, this is a complicated time, and the potential for conflicts, for different interests to dominate over that common interest and the common purpose, and what we often refer to as the public good, is certainly something that needs to preoccupy us. And I want to begin by also acknowledging very much the Republic of Azerbaijan, which not only in terms of its national response has built on the investments it made in e-governance, in the civil service, in the health system infrastructure, and is now reaping some of the benefits of that capacity to respond. And Mr. Medvedev, you mentioned that indeed the e-governance pioneering work was recognized with a UN Public Service Award in 2015. These are the investments that we see in many countries right now paying off. I am struck also by the story of the state of Kerala in the south of India, that because it has had past crises, because it has invested in social infrastructure, the ability to do social tracking, but also testing, and the minimal provisions of a social welfare, or at least social safety net, have enabled that state to cope far better than others in this crisis. And therein lies a major lesson. We are dealing with a health crisis, but in fact it is putting a spotlight on the kind of development choices that we as nations and communities have made over decades. And I think it will inform the public debate, but it would also shape the decisions that will come out of this. The public knows what is happening. And while we have an infodemic, if you want to take the amount of information circulating, a lot of fake news, common sense very quickly reveals that there are choices we need to make over the coming months that will be fundamental to not only suppressing the virus, but indeed of coming out of this crisis very heavily indebted. Borge already alluded to it, and we know that we are heading towards a debt crisis in the global economy right now, alongside a, well, global depression or global recession. I mean, we can debate this, but whatever it is without precedent in magnitude, in speed, and in simultaneity. So this is the backdrop against which the United Nations has also tried to rapidly respond. And Mr. Medvedev, you have, with your country, been a strong supporter of the United Nations. UNDP has been a proud partner of your agency, of the Republic of Azerbaijan. We have worked on many programs together, and yet right now across the world, the United Nations is under enormous stress because we have to, on the one hand, help countries with the health system crisis. That is the Strategic Preparedness and Response Plan under the leadership of the WHO. We have the global humanitarian crisis that continue to be there, and so the Global Humanitarian Response Plan is an integral part of the UN's ability to provide the world with a means to at least have the minimal social safety nets that we can put in place to assist the over 70 million refugees, displaced people, and indeed many, many more in countries of conflict. Just take a country like Yemen. Well over 10 million people right now will either have a meal this evening or not, depending on the United Nations, and particularly the World Food Programme, being able to deliver in the midst of a war these kinds of supports. And then the third track that the Secretary General put in place, the Socio-Economic Response, which is really the ability, and that is also the core of our partnership with you, to focus on the vulnerable, to identify those who are most likely to be at risk. And we know that this is women, it is children, it is the disabled, it is the elderly, it is the poor. And the ability of governments to very quickly identify those and then put in place measures that are often without precedent. We used to discuss universal basic income as a theoretical proposition. If you look at what is happening right now in many countries, cash transfer programs, temporary basic incomes have become the only way in which to actually manage this crisis. We are learning a lot very fast, and so the web forum that you are convening and hosting today is an opportunity to also reflect very quickly on the lessons that will emerge. And UNDP, embedded in the United Nations family with our resident coordinators at country level, has been designated as the technical lead for the socio-economic response, which is to help our UN family, the country teams, to be at your disposal to rapidly identify the priorities, but also to then leverage the technologies, the lessons learned, the programs, and also the fiscal space in which to respond. I end by acknowledging that in the way that we have worked with you, supporting the public administration, fostering investment in more efficient and targeted social services, but also assisting Azerbaijan to tap the unprecedented opportunities that we associate with digital frontiers, as Borge would say, the fourth industrial revolution that we have so often discussed at Davos. I think we have just lived through an extraordinary period of fast forward. What we perhaps envisaged, expected to happen over the next 5 years, is being comprimated and compressed perhaps into months or a year. Rapid transitions, rapid transformations, and opportunities will be at the center of how we are able to respond to this crisis. And I end by where I started with my remarks at the beginning. For governments, this will be a very different future. The role of government has been reshaped and redefined in just a few weeks. I think for economists, it is almost an incredible moment where we see not nationalization, but the return of government as being the only entity right now to which leaders in business, but also leaders in civil society, leaders of communities are turning, because it is the resource and the platform around which we're able to make a response work. It doesn't mean more government necessarily, it means different roles of government in relation to markets. The role of private financing, delivering public goods will also shape that discussion. And I hope that out of this forum, many ideas will emerge, that both for the Republic of Azerbaijan, but also for our efforts as the United Nations family to quickly connect innovation, pioneering responses, daring ways of thinking about the future will become part of our capacity to respond. We know this virus is not going to disappear. Our vulnerability is going to grow exponentially. We are far from being out of the woods, as they say, and it is by working together, by having solidarity, but also the enlightened self-interest drive this cooperation. The idea also of a United Nations beyond the institution, but going back to the idea of 1945, is perhaps the greatest test of our international relations. I thank you.
Mr. Achensteiner, UNDP Administrator, thank you so much for those incredible words. It's undoubtedly a time for governments to do things beyond what anybody would have thought. It's definitely time for private-public sector partnerships like never before. And more than anything, I personally believe it's a time to rewrite history, because the pandemic is only going to make us stronger as a global community and not weaker. So thank you so much for your words, Mr. Steiner. I'd like to move on to Mr. Borj Brend, who's the president of the World Economic Forum. Mr. Brend is the president of WEF. Previously, he served as the Norwegian Minister of Foreign Affairs 2013 to 2017. He also served as Minister of Trade and Industry, Environment, also held the position of Managing Director of the World Economic Forum, as well as member of the board of Statoil. Mr. Brend was the chair of the board of Mesta from 2010 to 2013, Secretary General of the Norwegian Red Cross for 2009 to 2011. He was a long-standing member of the Norwegian Parliament and deputy mayor in his hometown of Trondheim. Mr. Brend received his BA from the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. Mr. Borj Brend, please, the forum is yours.
Sorry about that. I just got started, you know. Former politicians just start to talk and then don't pay attention. So again, thank you to Azerbaijan and to President Aliyev for this initiative. I think the reality is that this is the way we are meeting now on webinars and also meeting digitally. We know that in Baku there's also a critical mass of people in the ITC sector. We know that the new technologies related to the fourth industrial revolution will also be very critical in the years to come, and especially for countries that also want to leapfrog economically. I think the crisis that we are faced with now, the health crisis, is unparalleled, at least for 100 years. We are faced with radical uncertainty. We are still in the phase of stabilization. We are not in a restart phase or a recovery phase yet. Leaders in the world are daily faced with the dilemmas between lives and livelihoods. When can you lift measures, in what way to get the economy started, but then avoiding a second spike and a second wave. This virus, the pandemic, COVID-19, has already had devastating effect on the global growth. This year, the World Economic Forum was expecting the global economy to grow with more than 3% globally. We are at least expecting the global economy to contract with more than 3% this year. That's a huge delta. I think most developed economies will contract with maybe 6 to 7%. And also developing economies will contract, not at the same level, but they definitely will contract. We don't know what is around the corner, because we also see that emerging economies now are faced with major challenges. We see capital flow also out of many of these economies. It is really huge numbers. If you look at the contraction of 3% globally, this means that we will lose around $9 trillion US. That's the size of the Japanese economy and the UK economy, the third and sixth largest economy in the world. It's really, really serious. And we are also very concerned about the impact it will have on jobs and unemployment. I think currently we are in a situation where we see something between a big recession, a great recession, and a depression. But fortunately, we have also seen leaders taking whatever it takes to respond to the crisis. Less flexibility on the monetary side this time compared to 2008, but the fiscal stimulus that have been taken is enormous, needed. It is needed to build a bridge between what we have seen in many economies now with the close down and what hopefully will come back next year, growth. This is not per se a structural crisis because many economies were doing pretty well before the pandemic. We saw, for example, some of the lowest unemployment rates in many countries for decades, and now we are seeing unemployment rates back to what some of the highest levels since the Great Depression. So it really needs to be targeted measures now on skills, education, but also on the jobs. And the stimulus has to continue. And if we work together, we're also going to achieve so much more. And these are one of the challenges that this is taking place, the pandemic, against the backdrop of a more polarized world. But most of the challenges that we are faced with are common challenges. We know that if we don't handle COVID-19 and the cases in a common way and deal with it together, we will not get rid of this pandemic. There will be second, third, fourth spikes if we don't get rid of the COVID all over the world. So we are in the same boat, but we're just not acting accordingly. And what I'm saying also to a lot of developed economies is that even a first-class cabin is not a safe place to be if your ship is in trouble. So this is something that we also have to bring with us in the time to come. Of course, we have to trace, we have to test, we also have to get treatments, and we have to have a vaccine, and the vaccine has to be accessible for everyone in the world. So it's a common goods. So this is extremely important to underline. A lot of companies are also now in trouble. We have a debt before this crisis that was higher in the private sector than in 2007 in the run-up to the Great Recession. Many companies have gone from a liquidity crisis to now an insolvency crisis. So we will see companies going bankrupt. We will see also huge economic impact on this. That's why the stimulus is so important moving forward. And we also have to use this stimulus to also move ourselves into a much more sustainable world. Stimulus is the only money, the fiscal stimulus is the only money that's going to be available. So we have to use this also into a transition of a more sustainable, a more inclusive, and a more job-creating economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Borg. It's really great to hear that example of the first class not even being safe, to use the stimulus for to create jobs and to do whatever we can. Thank you so much for those kind words. I'd like to invite next Mr. Luke Devine. He's Deputy Managing Director, European External Action Services, EEAS, in his current position since June 2016. And he joined the Directorate General for Trade of the European Commission in 1996. Since then, he's held different positions: trade, defense, aerospace issues, executive assistant to the Director General for Trade, head of unit, intellectual property, and government procurement in charge of EU international negotiation teams in these two fields. Head of unit Russia, CIS, Ukraine, West Balkans, EFTA, EEA, Turkey, and Central Asia. He's been head of unit market access, industry, energy, and raw materials. And prior to joining the Commission, he was a banker in corporate finance, M&A, and conducted international negotiations in the United States, Brazil, China, and Japan. Mr. Devine holds an LLM and a specialization in economic law, as well as a degree in financial analysis. Mr. Luke Devine, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. This most comprehensive introduction. And Salam Baku from Brussels, from the European Union Diplomatic Service headquarters. Thank you very much for inviting me to address you on behalf of the European Union. I certainly welcome this initiative by Azerbaijan to gather so many distinguished speakers for this forum. I think this is already an innovative approach to share ideas, and I want to especially thank ASAN and its chairman Mediev for organizing this. I had the pleasure to visit ASAN during one of my many trips to Baku, and I could see how efficient this service is, and also how important it is a tool to fight corruption with all its digital and cash-free transactions, and also has an important social aspect when you see younger people helping senior citizens, etc. And I'm very happy that the European Union has been supporting ASAN from the beginning. Also, ABAT, its affiliate company that's dealing with promoting a country's tradition and small family business. And we've been working with both. I also want to salute another prominent participant, or organizer rather, of the forum, which is the Port Baku, which is also our dear partner, and with whom we're working, and who is now benefiting from the latest European technologies to become the first green and energy efficient port on the Caspian. Today, as I would say, at the risk of being boringly consensual, of course, like other speakers, I would say that we are dealing that requires a global solution, and this has been also said very clearly several times by High Representative for the Foreign Policy of the European Union, Josep Borrell, and he repeated that also at the non-aligned movement meeting that President Aliyev, as chair of the movement, organized recently, and where Josep Borrell spoke. Clearly, we have already learned and shared a lot over the last months, fighting this virus and dealing with immediate health needs. We have put restrictive measures in place, and now we are at the moment when we're trying to gradually, and depending country by country, to come out of it. Clearly, the biggest challenge is to fully recover a social life and a fully functioning economy is still ahead of us. And we need to work more to make our transport systems back on track, to ensure our production, our supply, especially for food, for medicines. And we have to find also a way to restore our trade relations. In Europe, we clearly have, unfortunately, a tragic and first-hand experience of the pandemic. And we will have to deal with the severe social and economic consequences. It didn't stop the European Union to contribute to the global efforts. And I want to underline in this that a few days ago, as you know, the European Union, with the World Health Organization and other partners, has hosted an international pledging conference, which raised 7.5 billion euros in only a few hours as an initial funding to kickstart global research operation. The EU itself had already committed 380 million euros in R&D measures to develop vaccines and new treatment and diagnostic tests for the virus. And we have also made a pledge that when a vaccine, for instance, is ready, that it should be available and affordable to all. We have also shown solidarity beyond our own borders. We have our so-called Team Europe package, which has gathered a huge package of 20 billion euros for supporting the most vulnerable countries. The European Commission itself has already immediately reallocated 140 million euros for the most immediate needs for the 6 Eastern Partnership countries, out of which Azerbaijan. And we will also, for these 6 Eastern Partnership countries, redirect existing instruments for 700 million euros, focusing on social and economic impact, focusing on small and medium enterprises. Just a few days ago, we have adopted a communication, and our member states have adopted conclusions on the future of this Eastern Partnership, calling for a more strategic, ambitious and flexible framework, and especially to tackle common global challenges in I would say a wide range of areas, particularly of course COVID as well. Azerbaijan is one of these 6 Eastern partners and will definitely benefit from what we can offer. And very clearly, for instance, the modern, I would say, the modern and smart phase of Azerbaijan, like ASAN is, also is very much resonating with our own Commission priorities in dealing with digital, but also our climate change priorities, as I was mentioning. These are just a few examples of what the EU does for the crisis for COVID. I would also say a final word when it comes to Azerbaijan and our bilateral cooperation, which is indeed quite important. We are currently negotiating a new agreement, and I believe that this will also develop and increase our different areas of cooperation. And it will also help Azerbaijan diversifying its economy, and the recent crisis and also the impact on the oil prices has shown how important it is to have indeed a diversified economy. And we welcome certainly the diversification that was chosen by Azerbaijan 4 years ago, and to put people first, offering social assistance and helping small and medium enterprises. We encourage in this regard a maximum of openness and transparency using the best international practice, digital solutions that we Europeans can share, and we will certainly continue our partnership. I believe that the distinguished participants, you have a very interesting discussions ahead. I would like to thank again Azerbaijan for hosting this meeting, and Dr. Al-Malik told us about the Chinese way of writing crisis. I didn't know if China was chosen as a coincidence or not, but let me just dwell on the etymology of crisis in English, which is actually a Greek word, which means which comes from krinin, which means to judge, which is same root as criteria. So this crisis is also an opportunity to make the right judgment, the right decisions, and we believe Europeans that this can only happen in a multilateral framework, which we will continue to support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Luc Devine, Deputy Managing Director, European External Action Services, EES. Thank you so much for those kind words. Undoubtedly, I think collaboration at every level is just this one thing that we have to do, and that one thing is resonating from everywhere. So you're right on, on target. Thank you so much for those kind words. I'd like to invite Mr. Alikhan Beymenov, Chairman of the Steering Committee of Astana Civil Services. Mr. Beymenov is the Chairman of the Steering Committee.
Yes.
The ACSH promotes civil service effectiveness by supporting the efforts of governments of countries of the region and beyond in building institutional and human resource capacity of national public administrations.
I've done it 4 times.
ACSH serves as a multinational platform for exchange of experience and knowledge sharing in the field public administration,
okay, because I hear everybody, I see everybody.
42 participating countries, international organizations such as OECD, UN, UNDP, UN, DESTA, UNOSSC.
They said you are not sending the video. I don't know why.
RESP, and 55 institutional partners from different parts of the world. And Mr. Alikhan Beymenov, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Excellencies, distinguished participants, first of all, let me express my sincere gratitude to the government of Azerbaijan for organizing today's forum, which is of great importance to all of us. I extend my deep appreciation to the State Agency for Public Service and Social Innovations for the long-lasting cooperation. The COVID-19 pandemic poses an unprecedented challenge to economies and societies around the globe. Coupled with the increased level of interdependence and fluctuating oil prices, the new COVID-19 reality has amplified the features of VUCA world. In these circumstances, being under immense pressure, governments have accumulated certain experiences in comprehensive and adequate response. Yet there is no universal roadmap for dealing with this pandemic. Therefore, forums like today's one and international platform are gaining ever greater importance in disseminating best practice. In line with this, the Hub has launched the Virtual Alliance of Practitioners for exchange of experience in the context of COVID-19. The digital platform gathers existing research and innovative solutions for participating countries and partners of the Hub. The Virtual Alliance is based on the website of the Astana Hub, and I invite you all to join this alliance. This initiative derives from the mission of the Astana Hub, which is a joint initiative of the government of Kazakhstan and UNDP that comprises today 42 countries and over 70 institutional partners. Being one of the founding countries, Azerbaijan has been supportive to all Hub's initiatives. The Azerbaijani one-stop shop model, acknowledged by the UN through its prestigious Public Service Award, is of great interest to the Hub's participating countries. Our long-term and fruitful partnership both with the ASAN service and the State Examination Center resulted in several joint research publications, case studies, and numerous activities. It's worth noting that as a result of the above-mentioned Virtual Alliance, the experience of Azerbaijan in introducing a digital permission system during quarantine has been successfully replicated in the city of Turkestan in Kazakhstan, and by that evoked interest of other participating countries. To date, there are 7 countries and 10 partner organizations contributing to the experience sharing through the Virtual Alliance. In a similar way, we constantly feel the support of UNDP, the Hub's key implementing partner. For instance, in close collaboration with UNDP, Hub supports the government of Kazakhstan in enhancing resilience and business process continuity in the public sector, with a primary focus on enhancing the capacity of civil servants to deliver quality services. As part of this effort, we help in reviewing the barriers preventing effective telecommuting. As a next step, jointly with UNDP, we are ready to support revision of the Digital Kazakhstan program, taking into account the lessons learned. Ladies and gentlemen, undoubtedly the post-pandemic world will require reassessing and rebuilding public administration. It concerns not only a wider use of information and disruptive technologies. One of the aspects to be reviewed is the distribution of resources, responsibilities, and powers between levels and structures of the government. This will also lead to the reassessment of the role and value of different divisions and positions. Another aspect concerns agile forms of management, flexible tools of contracting with employees and service providers, as well as flexible work schedule. In the context of economic downturn, there is a need to find ways of decreasing operational and administrative costs for the public service. Meanwhile, the wider and deeper use of IT will not only affect work processes, but also requires the new methods of addressing challenges such as the virtual accelerators. Dear ladies and gentlemen, this pandemic has emphasized once again that trust is crucial for the effective governance. It's not only social capital, but also the effective administrative capital. Therefore, we will need to think about ensuring a balance between maintaining security and respecting the rights and freedoms of citizens. In this connection, retaining legitimacy, accountability, and transparency should be at the core of the decision-making. I hope that today's work forum will contribute to a more effective response to the pandemic. I wish you every success in this endeavor. May all your hopes come true in this holy month of Ramadan. Thank you.
Mr. Ali Khan Bemino, Chairman of the Steering Committee of Astana Civil Services Hub. Thank you so much for those words. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to do a time check. We are about almost towards the end of this this conference, Agility, Pandemic Response, coming together as a global community and forging ahead, not just fighting the pandemic, but thriving throughout it. Last but not least, I have Mr. Jean-Pierre Ilong Mabassi, who's Secretary General of UCLG Africa. He's been the chairperson of the Alliance Interim Management Board till April 26. He's also co-chair of the World City Scientific Development Alliance and Deputy Secretary General of China Africa Forum of Local Governments. Mr. Mabassi is the main man behind the AfriCities Summit, the largest event of cities, regions, and local communities in Africa, where he oversees the organization since the first edition in 1998. Mr. Mabassi has a rich experience of nearly 40 years in the field of urban development and planning, urban services, local economic development, local governance, housing, and of slum upgrading. Please welcome Mr. Jean-Pierre Ilong Mabassi. Mr. Mabassi, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Dear participant, on behalf of the United Cities and Local Governments of Africa, the umbrella organization of local government across the continent, I am delighted and honored to take part in this global forum in these difficult times of coronavirus pandemic. Allow me first and foremost to express my sincere thanks to the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan and to the ASAN service for having invited UCLG Africa to participate in this important event, for which I sincerely congratulate you. I also wanted to participate in this forum because of the solid, sound, and sustainable partnership that UCLG Africa has established with ASAN service since the signing of our Memorandum of Understanding during the UN Public Service Forum and Award held in Marrakesh in the Kingdom of Morocco in June 2018. In fact, ASAN service, which I had the honor to visit a few years ago, and which engagement and dedication at the service of the Azerbaijan citizen, I too, for myself, is an instrument the Azerbaijan people can be proud of, given the excellence and the quality of the services it offers. In my opinion, ASAN service is a world-class role model and a source of inspiration for all those who wish to use smart solutions that are citizen-oriented. It is not surprising that ASAN service was a two-time winner of the United Nations Award of Excellence in Public Administration. Well, statistics released by the African Union reveal that African countries are affected by the coronavirus pandemic. But thanks to the very early warning action and respect for measures that were enforced, especially through the mobilization of local and regional governments and the National Association, the number of deaths has been limited so far to less than 2,000 for the whole continent. It is also true that this low mortality is to be linked as well to the very wide use of medicine derived from the African pharmacopoeia. In Morocco, part of the success of the country's recognized performance in the fight against the pandemic is related to the use of smart solutions in the surveillance of the movement of people and the confinement of infected people using drones and mobile phone solutions. Unfortunately, in that regard, the digital divide and the digital gap are still a serious challenge in the African continent, in particular at the local and regional government level. Given the experience it had gained in the implementation of ASAN service, it is our hope that the Azerbaijan government will be interested in sharing widely this experience with the African countries and will be keen to support politically and financially at its soonest convenience the enforcement of the MOU signed between UCAG Africa and ASAN service in June 2018, so that smart solution and e-government solution can be accelerated on the African continent, including for use in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic and its aftermath. What I want to raise, though, is that there is many local governments in Africa will be hit in their budget by this pandemic. And I see a lot of packages that are supporting enterprises, but no one is directed towards local government. It is very critical that we address this downturn of local government budget, because it is critical that they are supported as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for attention.
Mr. Mabasi, thank you so much for your insight. Definitely, as the different groups work together, and people like yourselves and everybody who's participated in this opening session work together, share their ideas and thoughts, I think we will all end the pandemic before we expect it to, and hopefully we all come out of it stronger as governments, countries, nations, public, private sector, and that's really the goal. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating in this opening session. I do want to say that the meetings will continue through the 4 panels and the ending session later on today. And please hang out here. Please come back to attend the rest of the sessions, because there's still more to talk about today and tomorrow. Now, I would like to conclude this session by thanking, first of all, Mr. Ulvi Mehdiyev, Chairman of SAPSSI, ASAN Service, for presiding over this initial session, putting the forum together, the Republic of Azerbaijan, ASAN Service, everybody who's been involved in this. Thank you so much for putting this Agility COVID-19 session web conference together. We need it. And thank you, Salim M. Al-Malik, Director General of Cisco, for sharing his thoughts and ideas. Mr. Achim Steiner, UNDP Administrator. Thank you, Mr. Borj Brent, President of the World Economic Forum. I think but economies have to come back. We have to work on it together. Thank you for sharing your insights. Mr. Luke Devine, Deputy Managing Director, European External Action Service, EEAS, again, for your European perspective on what is happening and what we need to do through collaboration. Thank you, Mr. Ali Khan Bemino, Chairman of the Steering Committee of Astana Civil Services Hub. Best practice coming out of Kazakhstan, the great words about cooperation and collaboration regionally as well as internationally. We need to hear those success stories in order to work together. And Mr. Jean-Pierre Ilong Mabasi, Secretary General of UCLG Africa. Thank you for your extensive comments and your experience that you bring to the forum. With this, I'd like to call a close to the opening session, but the next session will start in about the next 10 to 15 minutes. Please come back and let's learn over the next 2 days. My name is Ian Khan, and hopefully we'll meet again. Thank you so much, and please have a great day. Thank you.